Welcome to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. For the past 43 years, the staff at the George Snow Scholarship Fund and scholarship.org have dedicated themselves to empowering young people and ensuring that they have the access to the resources that they need to succeed in their educational journeys. In each episode, we'll sit down with experts that provide practical advice that will help students overcome challenges, thrive, and maximize their college experience. My name is Tim Snow. I'm president of the George Snow Scholarship Fund and scholarship.org.
And my name is Shannon Elwood. I am the Director of Communications for the George Snow Scholarship Fund. But along with that, I also bring years of experience working closely with college students during their educational journeys.
So in today's episode, we're diving into everything incoming college students need to know as they step onto the campus for the very first time. From making friends and finding your people, to discovering the campus resources and building connections that will be with you for the rest of your life. Joining us today are Dr. Keven Allen Jr. and Marcklen Cirius. Dr. Allen has served over 12 years in higher education administration. Dr. Allen is a first-generation college graduate and is passionate about helping student success. We also have one of our own Snow Scholars, our 2023 Snow Scholar, Marcklen Cirius. Marcklen currently attends Florida A&M University, and he's studying civil engineering there. He serves as a resident advisor on his campus. He's involved in several student-led organizations and also is a first-generation college student. And I also want to add that Dr. Allen has previously advised our scholars during our high school to college transition program and provided them with some really valuable guidance on navigating the college environment. And some of today's questions are going to be inspired by the advice that Dr. Allen has given our scholars in the past. So let's just kind of kick it off and kind of set the stage for what we're wanting to talk about. You know, as scholarship providers, every year we send off hundreds of students into their first year. And we try to prepare them for that, through that program that we have, the high school to college transition program. But we know that that transition is oftentimes a stressful one. And it's one that many of our first generation students, they really don't necessarily have family members that can, have been through it and that can advise them on it. So what we want to do today is kind of talk about that and to talk about what y'all's experiences are and the advice that you can give them. So Marcklen, let's ask you, how was your first days on campus and how was that transition for you?
So my first days on campus, I think it genuinely was some of the most memorable times at FAMU I've had, because not only was it extremely fun to be on college, to be away for the first time, you're by yourself, this is your first step into adulthood, but it was also the scariest moments of my life. Learning to go through that and how to cope with that while being on top of your academics, while trying to maintain a social life and trying to understand that once that first year is done, you understand that you can make it through. It is possible to do so. So those first couple of days are days that I appreciate, that I fully embrace the college experience, going out, meeting new people, talking to people, not being timid, and, listening to what my mentors and what people who have already been through this path have told me to, actually go to study hours and things like that, actually listening to advice, not just kind of hearing it and letting it fall on nothing.
That's awesome.
Good. Well, it sounds like it was a little bit of a scary time, but you certainly got through it well. And Keven, I don't know if you can remember your first days.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, Tim and Shannon, for this opportunity. Unlike Marcklen, I didn't come from a strong, pre-collegiate program that gave you some of that background. I went to Florida State. When I got to Tallahassee, everything was fine over the summer. I got into the care program. It was still hot in Tallahassee. There wasn't as many students. So I finished my first semester with a 3.7 GPA. But when the fall came around, I had to live off campus. It was cold in Tallahassee. I'm from Miami. My tropical blood wasn't ready. By the time I finished my first semester GPA was a 1.8. My second spring semester GPA was a 2.3. My GPA dropped from a 3.7 to a 2.7, and I lost all of my scholarships. So my first year was challenging only because, like a typical first-year student, I went in head first. And if I could have done anything better, I would have used the resources that the care program provided earlier, right? So that they didn't have to help me recover from the situation. They could have helped me respond to the situation.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
I think that's a great point because we have a lot of students that have FSU cares or are a part of the program. So I think that's a really great piece of advice to acknowledge to our students who might be listening. And then that actually, I think that answers the question I was going to ask next was, what do you wish you had done differently? So you feel like that was your number one thing that you wish you had done differently, huh?
Absolutely. I tell students, it's never too late to ask for help, but there's always a good time to ask for help. And the earlier you ask for help, the better, right? Because if you ask me in enough time, I can help you to respond to the situation. But if you make decisions and you start losing scholarship or your grades drop, now we're in recovery mode. So I always tell students, you want to ask in enough time so you're not losing out on opportunities that if you would have asked earlier, we wouldn't be in those situations.
That's a good point. Being proactive instead of reactive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. And was there anything that you'd do different, Marcklen?
I think the one thing I would do different was step outside of people that were in my classes, like stepping outside of my major, getting to meet the campus and, networking, because that's one of the greatest opportunities college has for us, right? You're going to be in the same classes with probably the same people for the next 4 years. Yes, build connections with them, but don't be afraid to talk to people outside of your major, because there's a lot of different perspectives in this world that you want to see, that you want to meet, that can just grow you exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had the chance to speak to some incoming college students about a month ago. They're students who are high school seniors right now and will be going to college very soon. And one of the questions that they wanted to have asked was, how did you address anxiety over entering a new chapter?
So I will be honest with you. I didn't address the anxiety because I allowed the anxiety to overwhelm me, right? And I reacted instead of responding. And I think that we react when we feel fear, when we feel anxiety, we let the emotions take over us and we just make knee-jerk decisions, versus responding is when I take control of those emotions. I pay attention to the reality of the situation, and I make decisions that is sound decisions based upon the help that I have around me. And so from my experience, all of the emotions I felt, I let them overwhelm me. And the problem really wasn't that big, but because I was in my own head, right? I allowed the problem to be more overwhelming than what it really was. And that's what drove up my anxiety and my fear. So if I had any advice, I always tell students, you want to get another perspective, because you're so close to the situation that it's big to you based upon your limited experience. But if you get someone else's perspective, they can show you things that you can't see because you're in it. So it goes back again to inviting help in, inviting individuals in, because courage is not the absence of fear. It's doing it despite the fear.
Yeah.
And that's when you really begin to move forward and grow.
I like that. Thank you.
I agree with that fully, understanding, seeing where other perspectives are, because I get very short-sighted, sometimes still am, but how I deal with that and that anxiety that induces is I have a problem or I have a goal, right? Break it down into simple steps, because the more that you see you're checking off little things off of your checklist, the less anxiety you will feel, because you're seeing actively what you are progressing to get where you need to be in the real life, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
So I'm going to probably go off of the script a little bit because I'm just curious if you guys recall, you talk about it being, it was, there was a lot of anxiety involved in that. Was there anything that jumped out at you? Like, was it the new environment that brought on the anxiety? Was it the uncertainty as to what you should be doing, or, where am I going to class? And, to me, that was kind of a strange part of, I didn't know the university, I didn't, I had a class. I knew I had a class in some building. It was called some hall, and I had no idea where it was. And then I was late to class and those sort of things. I don't know if anything jumped out at you guys in terms of the things that created that anxiety.
My problem was I went to college because I was trying to get away from my environment. I grew up in a low-income, area in Miami, in Liberty City, Miami. I went through domestic violence situation. I didn't have a chest of drawers. We lived out of a box until I got a dorm room. So when I got to Florida State, I was running away from Miami because I didn't want anything to do with that. And I spent so much time running away from something that I never looked up to realize what I was running towards. And a lot of my anxiety and fear that I had was I'm here at Florida State trying not to go back to Miami. Mm-hmm. I wasn't at Florida State to, get a degree. I wasn't there to take advantage of opportunities to study abroad. I was trying not to go back home. And so imposter syndrome set in, all of those things set in. And yes, I was in the CARE program. Yes, they were presenting resources to me. But the challenge for me was, you can give me a hammer, but if you don't show me what the hammer's for, I don't know what to do with it. Right. So I was getting all of these resources and no one helped me to understand how to use the resources. And so all of those things was overwhelming. And I think that a lot of what I was dealing with as a first generation student coming into Florida State it wasn't until I sat down with an advisor to help me realize. She asked me one question. She said, look around, look at where you are and take advantage of where you are. You're not there anymore. And until I had that mindset shift, it was really, really difficult those first couple of semesters.
And it took you a couple semesters to get there, huh?
It did. I didn't get myself together. Once my GPA failed and I lost all of those scholarships, I went to my financial aid advisor and said, I got to go back home, because at first I was getting a net check. I got the refund check. I got $3,000 back over the summer. The first thing I went and did was bought my mom a Coach purse. I mean, we were doing well. And then when I lost all my scholarships, the first thing I thought, boy, I hope she kept that refund receipt because we're going to need that money back. And so it wasn't until I sat down with an advisor to help me to say, hey, even though you have a 2.7 and you lost scholarships, you're not on academic probation. Right. Nobody's going to tell you to go home. There's still a path forward. That conversation didn't happen until the beginning of my sophomore year. So my entire freshman year, I was under the gun of running away from Miami, trying not to become a failure. And when failure faced me, I was closing the door on my own future.
So for me, it was kind of my environment, but instead it was, I loved my environment so much to step outside of it. It was scary. I think from a very young age, it settled into my mind that even though my parents didn't go the path that I am going, that they want me to go to that path and they're pushing me and towards people that can help me understand and guide me through that. I think leaving South Florida in general, it was scary because I'm leaving all those people. Everybody that helped me through elementary school, the middle schools, the high schools, right? All kind of like the older people at my church guiding me, telling me like, hey, you should be taking this. You should be seeking this. I'm losing all those people. Now I'm by myself. You have to think on your own, think on your feet. I can't run to my parents and be like, hey, like I need this, or I run to my cousin. Hey, I need this. My church friend. Hey, I need that. You have to be able to think on your feet, think quickly, and be able to make decisions that can affect you for a lifetime, but make those decisions correctly. So that was my environment that I was scared of leaving, kind of being in a bubble. And then wanting to pop that bubble to understand how it is truly.
And we have a lot of students that have encountered that. And sometimes they don't even realize it until they're in college, that they don't have the teachers, the family, the support that they grew up with. Yeah. And yeah, it's an adjustment. Yeah. So I think both of your perspectives are really important to highlight. So I was going to ask about professors. I know that you've given advice to our scholars before about the importance of connecting with professors. Yep. I mean, we'd love to hear from both of you, but why is connecting with professors and going to their office hours, why is that important?
I can tell you this right now. If you're not going to study or office hours, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So many chances. I could speak on one of my classes this semester. I think I was 0.6 or 0.5 points away from an A because we don't do plus or minus at FAMU. So I was from an A, and that's like a 3.0 versus a 4.0. You know, going to those study hours, making an effort actually in the class that you're willing to learn, you want to learn, and you want to attain the information, it sets on the professors because a lot of students kind of go into class like they're going to college, especially in Tallahassee. You know, we're known for being on quote unquote college party town, whatever it may be. So they encounter a lot of students like that. When they see you're putting in that effort, you're putting that in that extra step, they're seeing you and they're acknowledging you. And that goes to when you want other opportunities and you want to seek other things, those professors are going to be able to vouch for you now. They're going to want to write you letters of recommendations, especially if it's professors that either practice in the field or that's their field that they're teaching currently, right? Those are steps that you can take. Like for me, example, I'm an engineer. A lot of our engineering professors, they're doing research, right? They'll offer you research opportunities because they know that you're willing to put in the extra time, right? You're building those connections with the professor. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always advise students, just to add on what Marcklen's saying, is every professor has their bio on the website. And so pull up their bio and find something. Typically toward the end, they're going to tell you about their hobbies. They got cats, they like dogs, they go fishing. Find something. Introduce yourself within the first 2 weeks of classes and just bring up something from the bio. It doesn't matter what it is. You may hate fishing. You may not know anything about fishing, but you say, you know, Professor George, I saw that you love fishing. Why do you love fishing? Tell me a little bit more about it. Because the mistake that students make is networking is not about meeting people. It's about building relationships with people. And you don't need a lot of people to have an effective network. And so when you find that professor that you feel that you could connect with, you read their bio, take that point, and begin to build that relationship. And then from there, during holidays, send them a Merry Christmas. And then tell them, hey, I enjoyed your class. And then when you come into your next semester, hey, Professor George, just wanted to send you an update on how I'm doing. That stuff matters. Why? Because professors are not only connected to, like Marcklen said, research opportunities. They have connections to job opportunities, internship opportunities. You never know where the ROI on that relationship comes, but you have to invest the time to building that rapport. And I tell students, you may not connect with every professor in your schedule, but every semester, there should be at least one professor that you build an intentional connection with.
I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on, I just remember, you know, back in the day, a long time ago, it was intimidating for me to do that. You know, I was kind of, you talk about imposter syndrome. I was afraid to ask for any help. And that's a mistake. And so do you have any advice on our scholars or anybody on sort of how to overcome that apprehension that I think so many young people have to go to an adult figure of authority or what have you to establish a connection? And whether it's a professor or even a campus resource.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think a part of it is, so one of the things is there's certain way people present themselves. Some will present themselves as being warm. Some will present themselves as being cold. And so you got to watch the disposition because that matters. So what I tell students is that the way you are able to get over that is when you go to the office hours, it's a very different environment than the classroom, right? And that syllabus is your contract. I said, and here's the piece, you're going to have to visit that professor, right? Because if you don't do well in the class, you don't want that to be the first time you meet the professor.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So either you can meet them voluntarily or involuntarily, but you're going to meet them eventually. So while you have control of the situation in those first couple of weeks, you don't know them and they don't know you. And it could be just a simple, hey, how are you? Another thing, if you're afraid of going to office hours, just walking up after class and saying, hi, professor, I just wanted to shake your hand and introduce myself. Next class. Hi, professor, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for the lecture.
Yeah.
Because sooner or later, he's going to start recognizing you, seeing you show up. And in those little ways, those are ways that you can build rapport. So you don't have the same intimidation of setting up an office hours, but at least you're making those groundwork so they recognize you so that whenever you do have to have a question or conversation, you have the follow-up and they know who you are.
And it will stand out to the professor.
Absolutely.
It will stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Understand that when you introduce yourself to professors, you have stepped up to be less than 1% of their entire student roster that has taken that initiative.
Yeah.
They already know that they're going to meet all their students at midterms and at finals.
Right.
But when you take yourself out of that group and you take they know the effort it takes just to say hello.
Right.
That speaks volumes.
Yeah.
And it will return later in the semester. And
I'm guessing once you've done it once or twice, it just becomes natural, right?
Absolutely,
It's
it
so
does.
easy to do.
yeah,
And it doesn't take a lot of effort
nope.
once you become comfortable with it to set yourself apart
Yeah.
from everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So did either of you guys overcommit yourselves in the beginning of your first semester, your second semester, signing up for different activities, joining different clubs, and did either one of you guys sort of overcommit yourself?
So I would like to think I actually undercommitted myself,
All right.
if I'm being honest with you, because coming into at West Boca,
Mm-hmm.
I love my school. I love them still. I still talk to a lot of the administrators there. I had all these positions. I wanted to take a break. I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted to take a break. I said, okay, if I'm going to do this thing for the first time with not a lot of backing, being first gen,
Mm-hmm.
I want to try to put my full effort into this, right? So that's what I kind of did my first year. And then coming into my second year, I was like, okay, I understand it. I'm getting the hang of things. Let me start to commit to more things, kind of how I did in high school, because I truly do love my community. I truly love wanting to give back to something that's given to me, right? So I think understanding kind of what is your capacity, because my senior year, that was my capacity. I knew what I could and couldn't do. That it taught me a lot about how to manage my time.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that, I think, even though it's it's kind of not everybody's experience, because I was in a unique position to do so many things, understanding how to manage your time, I think so.
Yeah. I think that's great. That's a great point, to dip your toes in the water, and it's okay to ease into it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just overwhelmed. There was clubs, there was organizations, there was parties, there was this, and it was, and I struggled finding my community. So it wasn't until I got a job on campus and I started working in the student union where I began to find my people, find my niche. And I didn't get that until my sophomore year. So, during my freshman year, I just kind of went home, stayed in my dorm, and I fell apart in all of those areas. So I underwhelmed myself greatly, but I think it worked against me because I didn't have community. So I isolated myself. And plus I lived off campus. So there was a lot of factors that really didn't work for me in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We do have, students kind of share with us that they went out and they joined whatever, photography club or did this and did that, really overcommitted themselves.
Yep.
And so it sounds like you guys kind of approached it in the right way, at least, or at least try to strike a balance, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Sort of establishing yourself, getting into a routine and finding out what free time do you have to commit to those things. Because I think it's important to be involved in some of those things, at least as in part of your college career. But I do know that it is a mistake to jump, all in immediately and then, really overcommit. Now your academics are suffering.
Yes.
A lot of things suffer that way. So
Yes.
it sounds like, just sort of getting yourself established and then feeling your way through the things that are important to you, whether it's for your own hobbies or for your career path. So it's good to hear you guys did that.
Yeah.
Dr. Allen, you mentioned when you talked to our students at our high school to college transition program that there was 3 key people that everybody needs to know on campus. Can you share a little bit of that wisdom with us?
Absolutely. So as your first year, the 3 people that you need to introduce yourself to: number 1, the dean of your college; number 2, your academic advisor; and number 3, your career advisor, your career coach, your career advisor. And I'll also add in there, just as a 4th step, is whoever your first gen, if there's a first gen office on your campus or first gen support, you want to make sure that you introduce yourself. The reason why the dean is important is because the dean knows all of the scholarships, all of the programs, all of the services that's going on in their college. And there'll be things that they'll know to tell you about that other students won't know and understand, right?
Yeah.
If you have issues with the professor, the dean is going to be the person that you want to speak with. Your academic advisor, when you fall into issues and challenges, right, with your academic advisor, with your academics, you want to be able to have your advisor that's able to help you navigate those things. Your career individual is going to help you connect to internships and opportunities. And when I say introduce yourself and network, and let me explain to you what I mean when I'm talking about a network. There's a difference between a net and a fishing pole, right? A net is built with a bunch of strings that is tied together by knots, right? Mm-hmm. Those knots, in my opinion, represent relationships. And you're able to catch a lot more fish with the net than you are with the fishing pole. And so when we talk about a network, it's your net, the relationships that you have intentionally built that's working for you. Yeah. So a lot of times, a lot of students will misunderstand a network meaning I've introduced myself to all these individuals. I'm not telling you to introduce yourself to a bunch of individuals and tell them your name. I'm saying these are the individuals that you select to build a deep relationship with. What do I mean by building a deep relationship with? I'm intentionally about sending them an email at least once a semester to update them on how I'm doing. I'm intentionally about visiting them, going to their office just to say hi. I'm intentionally that if they are at an event, I walk up to them to say hello, because those are the relationships that are going to return and yield and work on your behalf. So I really want to make sure that I'm clear, because a lot of times students will think networking is, I said hello, I said hi, I introduced myself, but no, it's about building the relationship and building the rapport. And I promise you, if you do that, it will yield a much returns. I'll give you a great example. I just got an email last week from a student who wants me to write them a letter of recommendation for medical school. And I was her advisor when she was a part of a student organization 7 years ago. I haven't heard from her in 7 years. So I'm sitting at my desk trying to remember who she was. You can introduce yourself to a professor your freshman year, but you can't wait till your senior year to then reach out and say, write me a letter of recommendation, because you don't have the relationship and rapport. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, find the people that you're going to build the relationships with, Because if you know you're going to go back and ask for a recommendation, if you know you're going to need an internship, pick those individuals out in advance and be intentional about building the relationship. And I promise you, it will yield returns.
That is such a wonderful point. And the story of the student is so important to highlight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, Marcklen. So you told me that you started college knowing no one on your campus. So how did you break the mold? How did you get to know people on your campus?
I think start looking for activities and organizations to join. I know that kind of contradicted what I said beforehand, but staying updated with my college allowed me to learn that we do host LLCs, which are living learning communities, right? We host those, apply to it, be a part of it, right? You get to meet so many people in your major. Chances are some universities require you to live your first year on campus. If you have the opportunity to live your first year on campus, live your first year on campus. You're staying in a dorm with over 800 students, right? We have community rooms. We have RAs that are there specifically to make sure that you can find somebody, meet people, right? We are active community builders. Go out. Every single college, I promise you, has a week, the first week of school, that they're going to have events after events after events after events. Go to those events. Even if you're by yourself, somebody will introduce you. If you're scared, just go up, because we're all people. We're all human. Not everybody's going to like everybody, but you're going to find somebody, right? If you put yourself out there, you're going to be able to meet more people and build with people, right? Because you're at this college for 4 years together. Even though if it's a big college or a small college, maybe you'll run in again with each other, right? Mm-hmm. Just don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Ask questions. Talk to the older people, right? We have a plethora of knowledge that we want to teach you guys and want to give to you guys because we've been at universities. We know how things work. We know who to talk to when you need something. We know, just talk. Don't be afraid to talk. Yeah.
Yeah. And also for those moments where you might be nervous to talk to someone, a piece of advice that I was given once is to tell yourself what's the worst case, middle case, and best case scenario that could happen if you try that thing. Mm-hmm. And then you realize that there is a variety of instances that could happen. And most likely it's going to lean on the more positive side, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And let me speak a little bit on student organizations, because there's a strategy behind student organizations. There's nothing wrong with joining, the chess club or the anime club or whatever but you need to, if you are in engineering, you need to be joining an engineering club.
Agreed.
If you are in accounting, you need to be joining an accounting club. Why? Because typically these clubs are bringing in speakers, experts of your field. These clubs are connected to other professional networks. Typically, they're chapters of larger professional networks that you need to be involved in. If you are going to join a fraternity, after you get over the letters and rushing and pledging and the colors, these fraternities have brothers who work in different fields. If you want to be in accounting, you need to figure out, do I have a brother who's an accountant that I can sit down and talk with? Does that make sense? Yeah. And a lot of times students join these clubs and organizations for the social aspect, but there is a real strategy and benefit that these student organizations have. So don't just go putting student organizations there to build your resume. Be strategic about the clubs that you join. Be strategic about the leadership opportunities that you become a part of, and make sure that they're benefiting you in the long run for your professional goals post-graduation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Keven, when we first met, I remember we talked about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the one thing that sticks out, well, a lot of things stick out to me, but one thing I remember was you kind of clarified for us, my colleague and I, what the definition of a first-gen student is. Because I think that I know that I was surprised that, and can you share with our listeners kind of maybe if you remember that conversation, that there's maybe several different definitions of first gen, or at least some preconceived notions as to what it is, and but and then really kind of what is it?
Sure. So When we talk about first gen, there's two definitions. There is the federal definition that's defined by the federal government. And then there is another definition that most of our universities, college universities, use. The federal definition is it's a student whose parents have no college at all, right?
Okay.
So from the federal government standpoint, if mom and dad went to Miami-Dade for 2 semesters and they never finished, and they put some college on the FAFSA application, you are not considered first gen.
Mm-hmm.
In colleges and universities, it is neither parent has completed a bachelor's degree. So the university, because they understand it from a social standpoint, knows that parents not having the bachelor's degree typically is where their first gen experience is going to be. That is not what that means from the federal level. And the first gen definition matters on the federal level because there are first generation grants that you become eligible for based upon that definition. So I always advise, and moms and dads, for the most part, they feel that by me putting my education level, right, I got a technical degree or I got an AA degree, that works. And in this case, it doesn't. So I advise parents and students, put no college at all, because that is how it's federally defined, versus when you're at colleges and universities, it's the broader bachelor's degree definition.
Yeah. And that's so important because it was after that meeting, actually, that we changed the language on our application, because we award so many students who are first gen.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it was worded originally was just, I think, will you be first gen?
Mm-hmm.
We reworded it to say, have either of your parents completed a bachelor's degree, just as you're saying, because a lot of them, unfortunately, were not identifying as first gen unless you tell them that's the true meaning. Yeah.
And to take it a step further, because this is also a misunderstanding, it doesn't matter if my brother and sister. So even if you had an older sibling who went and got a degree, the definition is based on the parents.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there could be 10 kids, right?
Mhm.
But as long as mom and dad doesn't have a bachelor's or master's degree, they're all considered first gen.
Aunts and uncles too.
Aunts
right?
and uncles too. It doesn't matter. It's only and if we be really technical,
Mhm.
it is really only based on the parent that completes the FAFSA application.
Oh, wow.
That's the technical definition.
Wow.
So if mom and dad file separate and mom has no degree and dad does, if you put mom on there, you're first gen.
Well, and that's really important because in my understanding, there's a whole lot of resources available on college campuses for first generation students. And can you share with our audience what some of those are? And Marcklen, I don't know if you've taken advantage of those kind of things or not.
Sure.
And then how do young people learn about those opportunities?
So the first thing I'm gonna put out there is scholarship, right? Grants. There is a state grant through the state of Florida, right, that you are eligible for as a first generation student. But when it comes down to scholarships, timing is everything. So typically at most, and I'll speak for the Florida state system, most of the time students who apply on or before the midweek of January, right, become eligible for all scholarships. That's federal, state, and collegiate, right? So that's scholarships based upon your academics for your colleges. Once you apply after that deadline, the only scholarships you're then going to be considered for is federal scholarships. Your state and your collegiate ones are out of the picture. So even if you're considering a college or university, apply before January, because that's when you're going to maximize the scholarship opportunities that are available at that institution. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is that particularly at most institutions now, and it's growing, a lot of universities are beginning to move forward with a first gen focused initiative. So most colleges and universities are going to, especially publics, are going to at least have a first gen office, first gen initiative. So you want to become a part of those opportunities because they're going to open you up to a world of programs, services, scholarships, and benefits benefits that they have available for you. And you could just and your academic advisor and your financial aid advisor will know what those opportunities are. So once you know that you're first gen, the first person you walk up to on campus, you let them know, I'm first gen. What are the resources and services that are available to me? And they will direct you and lead you to those offices. Or if you just type in first gen on the Collegiate website, 9 times out of 10, it'll pull up what those opportunities are. But from a scholarship lens, which is the 90% of why a lot of people want to know about it, timing is everything. And let me just speak on this really quickly while I'm on it. Applying for scholarships should be a continual situation. It doesn't matter if you got the George Snow Scholarship or not. The reason why is because if you plan on going to grad school, you can use those scholarship funds for graduate school.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes they carry over, right?
They do.
Yeah.
So I always advise students every fall break, winter break, and summer break, you should be applying to scholarships.
Yeah.
You should be applying to scholarships because it's a continual process, right? And they do a FAFSA review every year. So if you do your FAFSA, there may be opportunities that you may not have for the first year, that once you do your FAFSA for the second year, those opportunities and things may be open to you. So again, timing is everything when it comes down to money for college.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you know if they have resources at FAMU or?
So I don't think I took full advantage of it because I'm still a college student. So I'm taking in this advice still, of course.
Nothing wrong with that.
But I kind of went into FAMU like I kind of have everything covered. Like I don't have to really worry about anything. So like I'm not stressed about going out to seek more than what I already have per se, because I was fine. So I just don't think it was at my forefront of my mind that I'm first gen, because it's kind of like, and I think that happens for a lot of first gen students. Be proud of where you are. Like you've gotten this far, like comparatively to a lot of other people, you're in college. Like you've gotten the acceptance letter, you're there. Take it. Don't have imposter syndrome, right? Like you are able and you are capable to do this. The college or the university saw that in you, right? So I don't think that fully settled in my mind. More towards my second year, understanding the nuances of being first gen and accepting that and being proud of the fact that it's not something to hide. It's something that you can be proud of and something that you can wear on your sleeve.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's great advice. And, I think your point, it is what it is, right? And you don't know you're any different, right? I mean, you live in your life, and you're accomplishing all these things, and so it doesn't kind of click. And I hope that the show will educate folks on really the resources that can be there for you if you need them, And so, I really want to thank you. We're about out of time. I want to thank both you guys for coming here and sharing your experience and your wisdom with our listeners. I think we covered a lot of great ground today, and we're grateful for you guys being here for sure.
Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to College Compass by experts at scholarship.org. In our next episode, we're going to dive into the topic of applying to college, how to craft the perfect application for a college acceptance. So we hope you'll stay tuned.
In the meantime, you can learn more about us by visiting scholarship.org. And of course, stay tuned for tips and updates from our social media. You can follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn at George Snow Scholarship Fund, or you can find us on Facebook, TikTok, and X at Snow Scholarship. And as always, we look forward to guiding you through your educational journey.